folks. This is Sarah Marshall, and this is the fourth dispatch in our leadership series. We are continuing with our discussion about leading ourselves, and this time we're tackling elevating practices. Now, I've broken this into two parts because each of the practices takes some discussion, and I just can't fit all of them into a 10-minute dispatch. So we broke them into two parts so I can give them all the attention that they need. Now, in terms of elevating practices, we are, as we've been discussing, we've developed our purpose, and we are working on delivering on that purpose. But there are 5 elevating practices that can really turn up the levels of performance on our purpose, and they are all difficult. They are all, as I describe them here, all aspirational. Those 5 are unconditional commitments, intense presence, extreme awareness, tactical focus, and surrendering to our growth. And as I said, these are all aspirational practices. If you do them all fully, you will deliver on your purpose. But none of them are easy, and they all take a level of discipline and a fair amount of attention and effort to make them work. I'll walk through each one of these. In this dispatch, we're going to cover unconditional commitments and intense presence. In the next one, we will cover the rest of them. Let's jump into the rest of the story. So I want to tell you a little Zen koan here. It's one I read when I was a teenager about 2 monks playing a game of Go. And as they were playing, a third monk burst into the room and said, "Masters told me the world is ending tomorrow." And one of the monks that was sitting at the board stood up and said, "Well, if that's the case, I've been eating simple basic foods all my life. I definitely want to experience gastronomical delights. I want to be able to eat meals that really can taste the flavors, etc." And the monk that had burst in said, "Well, I've been celibate all my life, so I want to know the pleasure of a woman. I want to experience those earthly delights." And they turned to leave, and as they were leaving, they realized that the third monk was still sitting at the table. And they said, "What will you do, brother?" And that monk said, "I shall finish the game." Now, of the 3 monks that are in this koan, that monk that stayed at the table is practicing what we call unconditional commitment. And what I mean by that is that monk is where he wants to be, when he wants to be, doing the thing he wants to be doing, and it doesn't matter what the circumstances of the world are. That's where he is. And that's what unconditional commitment is. It's giving your heart and soul to that thing. In unconditional commitments, there are no contingencies. There's no untils, there's no unlesses, there's no only ifs, there is no contingency. It's a commitment with no guardrails and no exit ramp. And that means you are fully committed to that no matter who else is involved, no matter what problems you encounter, no matter what the challenges are. You're giving yourself unconditionally to that purpose to meet the commitments that you've established without anything in the way of that. It doesn't consider the circumstances. It becomes you, the leader. You become that purpose. You become that commitment, in that you will do it regardless of where anybody else is with it. And if you have those kind of commitments, that kind of unconditional commitment, you're going to move mountains. You think of people like driving social causes like Martin Luther King or Gandhi, that they were, when you think of the movements they were part of, you think of them because they were the movement. When you think of people that meet personal ambitions, heads of state have that drive to excel and take charge of countries, etc. Robber barons for making themselves rich, and Wall Street moguls. And it's not all negative. It's just personal ambitions tend to be personally supportive. Um, and then finally, leading large organizations, the folks that you meet that are company CEOs, US cabinet members, NGO leaders, you can pretty much, for their tenure in those positions, say, if you're thinking of the company, you're thinking of those people. They become the unconditional commitment. So that's the first thing to establish is your unconditional commitments to your purpose. The second one is to develop intense presence. And intense presence means you're right here, you're right now. If you're wearing a watch, you look at the watch and it says now. If you have a compass, you look at the compass and it says here. It is being in that very narrow slice sandwiched between the long history that you have behind you and the yet unknown future you have planned but are unsure of in the future. The narrow slice that sits between those two wedges is presence. And the idea here is to get to a state of intense presence that as you're operating, you are operating in the here and the now, because if you establish and achieve that intense presence, you're going to be most effectively productive in working towards your purpose and your commitments, and you'll feel the best when you're in the present. You feel good, you feel in the moment, you feel like you can get anything done in flow. Let's talk about this from an emotional perspective, and it'll help you understand how to know when you're in presence. So if you're focusing on the past, you're going to have emotions like nostalgia, cringe moments, regret, grief, relief, pride, melancholy, wistfulness. You'll have all these emotions that indicate you're backward looking. If you're looking towards the future, you might have hope. You'll have anxiety about what you don't know about the future. You may have excitement about something that's coming up, fear of something that might be coming up, uncertainty. Most certainly, if we're looking in the future, there's always going to be some uncertainty. And we're going to be looking at the artifacts of our ambition. What do the emotions feel like when you're intensely present? Well, they are contentment, joy, flow, gratitude, curiosity, mindfulness. Mindfulness being that you are emptying out all other thoughts to be in that moment, present in that moment, and fully present. You might feel stress, anxiety, frustration, and relief, but they will be emotions tied to what's happening in that moment and not any other time. So you want to really work towards this. There's a couple of things you can do to kind of kickstart yourself into this. If you're trying to develop gratitude, then you could have a gratitude journal, and the gratitude journal can get you present to the things that you're grateful for and help drive you towards that immediacy of being present. Mindfulness, you can do meditation, go on walks, practice yoga to get yourself grounded and clear and alleviate yourself from the thoughts of either the past or the future. And finally, if you're observing, if you're not out on the court playing, if you're not actually doing, but you're observing, you are not fully present. You are present to something else, but you're not fully present to yourself. So these are the things that you want to look at when you're developing intense presence. So in summary, what we're talking about is a couple of practices, this idea of unconditional commitment and this idea of intense presence to help focus us on the moment and really elevate our productivity towards our purpose. Unconditional commitments have no unlesses and tills attached. There's no contingency. Unconditional commitment moves mountains. It's the big effort. It drives the big commitments with big efforts to do big things. And building our capacity towards unconditional commitment requires supercharging it with a number of other elevating practices, which include intense presence. We'll cover the rest of them in the next dispatch. And if you want to read more about these factors, these elevating practices, you read my article, Are You All In?, which is in my blog, www.operations-architect.com. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, your feedback is welcome.